Hello, this very attractive rural setting is in eastern Poland. It's about 25 kilometers to the Belarusian border, not so far from Terezpol, Biała Podlaska, and I'm going to tell you here the story of a massacre, one which for me I note for its extreme brutality and sadism, and it's the first time that I've been here. I've wanted to come for a very long time, since reading Chrisopher Browning's book Ordinary Men. And the village you can see over there, you can just sort of make, well, can't really see much, but you can see they've got the spires from the church. That's Łomazy. I come round here, there in front where the trees are. That wasn't a brickworks, and I even came across. I was able to identify where this massacre took place from a description given by one of the witnesses of the brickworks, and indeed my vehicle is parked there, which might be able to make out. I can just about see it from here, but only just about. This forest was called then Chałę, spelt either C-H-A-L, that's L with a line through it, pronounced like a W, Y, or H-A-L-Y, and I have found it called that nowhere else. The massacre of Łomazy took place on the 18th of August 1942, when the Jewish population of this village was wiped out completely. Now the sources, the number one source material is the work of Christopher Browning, Ordinary Men. You've also got Daniel Goldhagen. You've also got a German writer, I think Stefan Kuhn, if I remember his name rightly. I think he was born in 1966. He more writes on sociology. There are a number of eyewitness testimony, and above all, I'd like to suggest you have a look at the Teatr NN, which is in Lublin, which has got a lot of documentary evidence of the Holocaust. It's in Polish, of course, and there's a book called Ordinary Jews, and I'm sorry I've forgotten the name of the author. And so there's a number of good sources for what we've got here. Also, there is from the Polish archives where I've got the names of a couple of people that Christopher Browning had to give pseudonyms to in order to get access to the Hamburg records, which are now in Ludwigsburg, relating to the trials of some of the criminals or the investigations of the criminals who did this massacre. I'm feeling a bit emotional. I mean, I've been doing this Holocaust stuff for 2/3 of my life now, and nearly. And this one, above all, I think it's maybe because so much is known, maybe because of the circumstances. But let's now go back. So Łomazy had a Jewish population of approximately 1,150, approximately, in 1939, making up almost half of the population of the village. I need to point out this moment that I'm speaking off memory, and I can make mistakes, which I won't do when I do a documentary type video on this. The Jewish population grew because people were, first of all, they fled from certain areas of Poland, and they were deported here. So you got people who came here not only from local areas such as Międzyrzec or Biała Podlaska, but also from very far away places such as Suwałki, Mława, Warsaw and others. So the population by August 1942 of Jews had reached around 2,100 approximately. Now the massacre that took place here was committed by Reserve Police Battalion 101 from Hamburg. As Chrisopher Browning described it, it was a unit of older men. Average age was 39. Came from Hamburg, which is traditionally a communist, or had been in the prior to the war. The people who were in this unit, they were 39 years old. That is, they were too young to have fought in the First World War, but too old to have grown up in the Hitler system. So they had been, to a certain extent, immune from the propaganda of the Hitler Youth and all the rest of it. So they were already grown up. Reserve Police Battalion. So they're not, the officers were professional policemen, but the others were taken because they weren't in reserved occupations. So they were doing jobs which would normally have seen them off into the army, but they weren't fit enough or something else for the army, so they ended up in a police battalion. The object of police battalions was to control the areas that the army had occupied. That was the general intention. It was also to secure things such as military equipment after battles had taken place, and to generally work as to keep the peace, shall we say. They were involved in fighting. Indeed, the Police Battalion 101 took quite heavy losses once it had to start fighting people with guns and not just unarmed civilians. They were aided. Now, Chrisopher Browning writes they were aided by something called Hilfswillinge, Hiwis. Now, this was a very broad brush, because a Hilfswillinge could be, for example, a doctor who was looking after wounded and sick Germans and civilians. So for that, or it could even be somebody who was actually fighting on the Nazi side. So it's a very wide band, but I can tell you who these people were. They weren't Travniki men, as has been written in some works. The people here were from the SS Drużyna Verbanda, the first Russian National Brigade of the SS. They were recruited from POW camps in the region of Suwałki in the early spring of 1942. So it was a situation obviously a bit like the Travniki men. They found themselves in POW camps and they got a choice, either starve or help us out. But unlike the Travniki men, the officers were Russians, and so it clearly was a anti-communist or anti-Stalinist unit of the Russian army. And in this case, they certainly seem to have distinguished themselves by their anti-Semitism, which of course in Russia goes back hundreds of years. So the early, go back in time a bit. The unit, the Police Battalion 101, came here to Poland in the beginning of July 1942. It was initially based in Biłgoraj, or around Biłgoraj, and on the, if I remember the date correctly, 13th of July 1942, I might have got the date wrong, they they took part a massacre. They committed a massacre. The person in charge was Major Wilhelm Trapp. He was in his early 50s. He was known as Papa Trapp, and he had the order to kill the Jews of Józefów Bilgorajski. And he told the unit that this massacre was about to take place, and he gave the opportunity to anyone who didn't want to shoot these civilians that they could just step out. Indeed, at the beginning, few of them stepped out, but as the killing progressed during the day, more and more and more stepped out. This is possibly unique. This is how Chrisopher Brown begins his book on ordinary men. And so this massacre took place over the course of an entire day, and it was done by the killer pairing up with the victim. They're going into the forest together. They were directed to the place by one Lieutenant Vorlauf, and where the killing was to take place. The victim had to lie down and was shot in the back of the head. The bayonet was placed on between the shoulder blades as an aiming guide, and then the victim was shot like that. This massacre took place over the course of the entire day. A few days later, they went to a place called Alexandrów, and there a massacre was also due to take place, but it didn't. The massacre was cancelled. The people from Alexandrów were given a temporary reprieve, and the reason for this is, I think, is because they decided that form of killing wasn't going to work, that they had to get others to do it for them. So the best way to do it is to get Soviet renegades. In this case, it would have been either Travniki men or the 1st National Russian Brigade of the SS. As far as this massacre was concerned, the Russians did turn up a little bit later than expected, but they were on time to wake up the population of Łomazy at 4 o'clock in the morning. The population was the houses were broken into, people were forced out at gunpoint. Those that didn't move quick enough or couldn't move quick enough were shot. So there were shots fired. People were gathered in the school, and the school had been used as the sort of the headquarters where the gendarmes were based. There was around 13 gendarmes in Łomazy. The ghetto as such, now the ghetto was in the centre, but it was an open ghetto. In fact, they don't seem to have been too bothered too much if people left it or not, and there wasn't any guards or anything like that. And it's absolutely in the centre of Łomazy. Of course, the people couldn't go very far anyway, so it didn't make any difference. A bit like in the film The Bridge Over the Verkwai, where the commandant says, well, there's no barbed wire here because where you're going to go is only the jungle. And that would be very true for the people who were here in Łomazy as well. They couldn't really go anywhere. So after the collection of people were there, and they waited a very long time on the sports field. At one moment, a group of around 20 to 40 people were selected, young men, and they were brought to this spot here, given shovels, and then they had to dig. There are photographs of them digging. And meanwhile, everybody else waited. 3 pits were dug at this site. On the way here, there were a couple of these people who managed to get off the lorry. I know of one case from the witness testimony where the person did make a successful escape, only to run directly into the hands of the of somebody from Police Battalion 101. The digging took some time. They were given shovels, obviously, and when it got to a certain depth, they then started to bring people from the village. Now, the people had to walk, although the killers were given transport lorries. Presumably, the lorries somewhere in this area, well, probably, I suspect, somewhere down there, would have parked, and the victims were told to take off their clothes. Now, the thing was, the Russians had something to eat, but it seems that most of them were very drunk. And so when the first victims came to the pits, which were around here, now the pit had a sort of it was done in such a way as to have such an entrance sliding going down, but the pit had filled up with groundwater. Indeed, in one of the photographs, you can even see the groundwater. And so as the people went in, and then for whatever reason, these Russians started to shoot at them. And so this blocked the entrance. And they were so the killing method was such that they went into the pit, they lay down, and then they waited to be shot. Now, they were so drunk, it would seem, that they didn't know what they were shooting at. Most people were just wounded, and for whatever reason, no mercy shots were given. There's another. One of the Germans, Lieutenant Gnade, a professional police officer from Hamburg, 41 years old. Josef Uwe hadn't shown any particular brutality other than anyone else, but here he behaved in a totally deranged and sadistic manner. And here I'll give you a quote directly from Chrisopher Browning's book, which is actually quoted up here in Polish. So I'll read that too. I'll translate it for you. And so, before the firing started, Lieutenant Gnade himself chose around 20 to 25 older Jews. They were only men with long beards. Gnade ordered them to crawl on the ground in front of the grave. Before they start crawling, they had to take all their clothes off. When the Jews started to crawl on the ground, Gnade shouted to those standing around him, "Where are my NCOs? Haven't you brought any clubs yet?" The NCOs went into the forest, found clubs, and then energetically beat the Jews with them. Another thing that happened here was that when the people started to come here, they got a rope, and they're supposed to carry a rope. So the people on the outside held a rope, and there were people walking inside. But this didn't make them go any faster. So the people at the back were walking very slowly, and some of them ended up getting shot on the way to the forest because of this rope. One of the officers, can't remember which one, shouted, "Enough of this nonsense, throw the rope away," and then the crowd the people just came in. Where they got the rope from, Chrisopher Browning says that they got it from the locals, but it seems a bit strange to think that a rope that long they could just find it lying around. But I've heard the rope as well from eyewitnesses as well, who said the same thing. The people who were brought to the grave, first of all, they would have had to undress about 40 meters from here. Now, some of the men were naked, some of them were allowed to be in their underpants. The women were allowed to keep their underwear on. They had their anything of value. They had to either throw on a blanket and or to hand in somewhere if it hadn't been already stolen en route. And they came down, and then they had to lie on top of the people in these grave, their friends, their family members, their fellow villagers, to lie on. They had been already killed or shot, and then these Russians shot at them. They were doing such a bad job of shooting that eventually the Germans themselves had to take over. There was somebody from the SS here as well who shouted at Grenada about them doing, or maybe it was Grenada who shouted at them for doing such a bad job. And so then for the Police Battalion 101, the Germans had to take over and do the shooting. 3 graves, big pits, were dug. 2 of them were used. So approximately 1,800 people in one, 100 in the second one. Now people, they kept some, the workers who dug the pits, they were kept back to cover them. And there was one person there who said, "I'm going to make a run for it." I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but when I do a documentary video, I'll have it. And he said that the friend said, "What for? Where to? They need us. They'll keep us alive. They need us to bury them." And he said, "Yes, but once they've buried them, they'll shoot you." He ran away, and he survived. But some 15 or so minutes later, the others were shot and ended up in one of these pits. The description you've got of the people in the pit with the groundwater rising, and you've got the situation where the Russians or even, and afterwards the Germans getting into the pit as well, this mixture of water and blood. The descriptions are utterly horrific of what happened here. Many of the victims clearly didn't die from gunshots. They died from suffocation. In some cases, it seems as though they did use bayonets on even some of the small children. May have even had their heads banged against trees or something like that before being thrown into the pit, and that was just to save ammunition. You see, the people who hadn't been killed, they knew what was happening. They could hear the shooting. All of the witnesses have reported the shooting and the screaming could be heard for some distance. So that is how the population of Łomazy was murdered by the Nazis. And this is how these conspiracy theories end up, because that's what this is. The utter horror of it. Right, I don't know if I've done a good job of that or not, because I'm a bit I'm feeling a bit emotional about this one here, more than I have done anything else, I think. And I need to point out that nobody in my family or anybody I know was either a victim or a perpetrator in this crime. I was yesterday. I was in Międzyrzec, which was a major transit ghetto. So I was walking around there filming. Before I was in last week, I was in Łuków and Stoczek Łukowski, and I've done videos from there. In some cases, I haven't. It hasn't been uploaded yet. It's a question of getting a suitable internet connection. Although surprisingly, the internet connection here is much better than you might think. At least where I'm staying in the forest, it isn't so good. My aim was to do a tour around the areas mentioned in Chrisopher Browning's book, which is something I've been wanting to do for many years. I think I was thinking that in 20 years ago, or August 2005, almost 20 years ago, I was with my then partner, and we went to Międzyrzec. Even then I started telling her how long I've wanted to actually come here and see this. On that same trip, I was in Parchiv, another place I'd wanted to come to for many years. And anyway, that's gives you a little idea of what I've done on this trip here. So I'm going to do a documentary style video on this as well. I have actually I've written a documentary style one up on this, although I keep finding out new things and I keep changing it. And I have done a biography of 3 of the perpetrators. I mean, at the moment they're not very long biographies, might end up being 3-minute ones, I don't know. And I've also done or at least I've sort of written the notes for a documentary style video on the trial of the commander of the Reserve Police Battalion 101, Wilhelm Trapp. So gives you an idea. Okay then, so that was nearly half an hour speaking off the top of my head, and I'm now thinking of the things I missed out, what I should have said. But anyway, I hope that's okay. So thank you very much for watching. I upload a longer video on every Friday. I do shorter videos on Tuesdays. That's to say, the shorter videos are normally an excerpt from one of my documentary style videos, or indeed it might be just something sort of a short documentary or something like that, or some quirk from history or something like that. And I do shorts videos every other day now, and I've got this planned 2 years into the future. So I've got enough shorts videos. I've got more than 700 shorts videos which have now been prepared. For those of you who have premium access, which I think costs €6 a month or 5, I can't remember, so a channel membership, that you've got access to all of the videos that I have actually finished. So okay, thanks very much for watching, and all the best from me in Łomazy, Poland.